To stop a scrolling user today, you are fighting against billions of dollars of algorithm optimization. Getting an audience to a dead stop is the absolute hardest maneuver in modern media. The common instinct is to go louder, with brighter colors, faster cuts, and screaming audio. But the actual solution is often found in the opposite direction. Capturing attention can be achieved by creating an absolute vacuum of information. My grandfather's cabin in the Appalachian Mountains has a rule painted above the door: never answer the second knock. Those 36 words function by isolating the reader. By the time you reach the final period, the narrative has shifted focus from a simple cabin to a specific set of survival parameters. The most effective narrative hooks work because they use quiet isolation and rigid parameters to force the audience to lean in. The specific geography, the Appalachian Mountains, signals deep isolation without needing long descriptive passages. It establishes a reality where help is a long way away. Narrowing the focus to a grandfather's cabin adds a layer of unspoken authority. It suggests a legacy of knowledge, that whoever owns this structure has spent generations learning the laws of this specific environment. The author draws a hard boundary, the rule, generating tension between the safety inside and the unknown outside. The phrase, "never answer the second knock," creates mental friction. Your mind is forced to reconcile what happens on the first knock. Withholding that context triggers an internal interrogation. Who is knocking? Why only the second one? The lack of information creates a nagging search for the missing variable. Hyper-specific, unexplained rules weaponize our natural pattern recognition instincts. Once a pattern is established but left incomplete, we stay until the sequence is resolved. In storytelling, rules are introduced so they can be broken. I broke that rule on my first night there. The pacing here is intentional. The protagonist doesn't wait a week or build a false sense of security. By breaking the rule on night one, the author maximizes the narrative velocity, launching the reader straight into the consequences. This represents the curiosity gap, the cognitive itch that occurs when there is a significant discrepancy between what you currently know and what you want to find out. The protagonist's immediate failure widens this gap. Passive observation becomes active anticipation. You are now tethered to the narrator. You know the rule was there for a reason. You are psychologically invested in seeing the fallout of their choice. This immediate transgression converts the abstract warning into a concrete consequence. The reader is no longer just looking at a cabin. They are witnessing an unfolding event. I'm still not sure what answered back. The power of this final line lies in its total ambiguity. If the author had described a monster with claws or glowing eyes, the threat would be limited by the writer's imagination. By leaving it undefined, the threat remains infinite. This forces a process of projection. Your imagination automatically fills the informational void with a fear tailored specifically to you. The brain conjures a threat more effective than anything that could be explicitly described. The grammar in the phrase, "I'm still not sure," is a vital detail. It pulls the narrative out of the past and bleeds it into the reader's present reality. This tense shift removes the safety of distance. The encounter is no longer a concluded event safely locked in the past. It is an ongoing, unresolved condition. In just 3 sentences, you were contained by a boundary, tethered by a transgression, and left in an informational void. This is the engineering behind a 30-second hook. It doesn't work by providing terrifying answers. It works by leaving the audience inside an inescapable question. 3 months ago, Wade Coleman inherited his grandfather's cabin in the West Virginia mountains, a place so remote the cell signal disappears half a mile before you even reach the driveway. His grandfather was a hermit who moved into the woods in the 70s and rarely left. When he passed, the estate lawyer handed Wade a single key and a note with a specific instruction: read what's above the door before you go inside. Carved into the wood above the front door, in letters worn smooth by 40 years of weather, was a single sentence: never answer the second knock. Wade dismissed it as the kind of superstition a man living in total isolation for decades might eventually start to believe. He made a fire, unpacked his gear, and planned to deal with the inheritance in the morning. At 11 p.m., someone knocked. 3 sharp, perfectly spaced raps on the door. Wade sat frozen, knowing his nearest neighbor was 4 miles away. When the second knock came, the same 3 raps in the same rhythm, Wade let curiosity get the better of him. He walked to the door and swung it open, only to find the trees and a rush of wind he hadn't noticed before. By opening that door, Wade had acknowledged the presence outside and removed the physical barrier between himself and the silence of the forest. He went back inside, but the house no longer felt secure. The next morning, the geography of the property made the previous night's visitor even more unlikely. The cabin was surrounded by trees so thick they blocked out most of the sky. Outside, Wade found dozens of deer tracks stamped into the dirt. They formed a perfect ring around the entire cabin. The orientation of the tracks was physically impossible. They were made by something walking backward, heel first, circling the cabin while constantly facing toward it. These vectors show the entity maintained a constant line of sight on the cabin's bedroom window throughout the entire night. Wade called the lawyer, who revealed that the grandfather had reported this exact phenomenon to the local sheriff's department for 40 years. Town records showed that multiple hikers lost near the property had been found sitting on the porch steps. All of them insisted they had heard a voice from inside the cabin invite them to enter. These accounts suggest a consistent pattern of behavior. The entity remains outside, restricted by the physical threshold of the cabin, until the occupant provides an explicit invitation. On the 3rd night, Wade sat in the main room with every light on, watching the door and waiting for 11 p.m. The knock came exactly on time. 3 raps. This time, Wade stayed silent and did not move. 30 seconds passed in a silence so total it felt like the entire forest was holding its breath. No wind, no insects, just an absence of sound. Then the second knock came. It was softer, almost polite, as if something were waiting for a response it was certain would come. From directly outside the door, a quiet voice spoke in the exact tone and inflection of Wade's deceased grandfather. "Wade, it's cold out here. Let me in." This mimicry targets the victim's empathy. By using the voice of a loved one, the entity attempts to bypass a person's survival instincts and manipulate them into opening the door. Wade stayed on the couch until sunrise. The moment the light hit the trees, he packed his truck and drove back to the city. He hasn't set foot in the cabin since. He refuses to sell it, leaving the property to be reclaimed by the Appalachian woods. Even now, hunters who pass the property occasionally call to report the sound of something knocking on the door of the abandoned building. This persistence highlights the mystery of the rule. Why is the second knock the one you must never answer? The first knock functions like a predatory sonar ping. It is a way for the entity to check for a response and confirm that someone is inside to hear it. The second knock is the actual hunt. It is the moment the entity begins to wait, knowing that if it is patient enough, the person inside might eventually compromise their own safety. In the deep woods, local superstitions function as survival protocols. They are the rules left behind by those who learned exactly what happens when you answer the wrong voice in the dark.